Well, today I want to talk with you about a product that is passion-led from its founder. Kind of the same story with me. That is why I just came back from making some of the B-rolls right here. So the brand is called Sparklinuts, and it derived from a passion of being outside, enjoying nature, and because of that, needing to be hydrated, right? So this is where the drink comes from, a hydrational drink that refreshes you while it's healthy and awesome tasting at the same time. So without further ado, let's jump into the pot and learn how Sparklinuts was founded and where its journey is going to head. Let's go. Okay guys, so I am sitting here as promised with Felipe today. Felipe, if you want to, you can give us a quick introduction about yourself and about the brand.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Andres. I'm Felipe. I'm originally from Brazil. I moved to the U.S. was a teenager, and I've been living in different cities in the U.S., working with tech companies, sales, business development, and I arrived at a time in my life that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and try something on my own. And I arrived at a time in my life that I knew that if I didn't try it, I would probably regret it. So I wanted to just go for it and see if it works. And beverage is something that I didn't have an experience with in terms of a business experience with. But as a consumer, I was a huge fan of all types of beverages. In Brazil, I grew up drinking coconut water. That was my obsession. Like all Brazilians have that obsession with coconut water. And when I moved to the U.S., I was also introduced to like seltzer water, sparkling water, which was not as popular in Brazil yet. And that was a big change for me in terms of how I experienced beverages, because I used to drink a lot of soda as well. And I love the carbonation of sodas. And once I started to drink seltzer water, I realized that I can still have the enjoyment of the carbonation without all the sugars and bad stuff that comes with soda. So once I realized I was going to do something as an entrepreneur, and I thought beverages made sense just because from a consumer perspective it was something that I enjoyed, and it was something that I knew I was going to enjoy trying to solve in terms of any challenges or problems that the industry had, or any white space that the industry had. And here we are, right, with Sparklinuts, which is my coconut water beverage brand. And what we're trying to do with Sparklinuts really is creating a different way in which people interact with the benefits of coconut water. So we use coconut water as the base, but we also add additional ingredients that help balance mind and body, like ashwagandha, L-theanine, and then each different variant of our product has a specific experience to it as well. We have immunity, energy, and hydration. And it's something that, again, I didn't see that it existed yet, right, in the market. Like a coconut water beverage with added benefits to it. A lot of people still to this day don't like the taste of coconut water, right? So that was another reason for us to introduce flavorings as well. So each different variant has a flavor, so that people that don't like the taste of coconut water can still enjoy the benefits of coconut water.
Cool. Could you quickly introduce us to the different flavors? You just mentioned different, basically, I would say, uses for each of the flavors. Maybe you could go through quickly, like which flavor is what, which one does what, basically.
Yeah. So for our, and actually it's a good point to bring back the reason too of how we came up with certain ingredients and certain flavors as well. Going back again to my roots being from Brazil and South America, that's something that I also wanted to bring upon the market, right? Kind of put myself a bit into the product, into what I'm trying to bring to the market, and introduce people to certain flavors maybe that are starting to gain some traction, but maybe are not as popular yet. But again, speak to my roots, right, and what I'm bringing into the product. And I'll start with our hydration variant, our SKU. It's a guava flavor. And guava is something that, as a flavor, right, is already somewhat popular, but it does speak a lot to kind of South American culture and Brazilian culture. Is a very popular fruit, right, in Latin America as well. So I knew it was something that we needed to try to bring to market. And for the hydration SKU, why it's called hydration, right? Obviously, coconut water is already hydrating. But for the premise and the value proposition that we have as a functional wellness, right, beverage platform, I wanted to make it even more hydrating, right? So how do you do that? we added just a little bit of sea salt. And
Really?
sea salt helps absorb the electrolytes of coconut water a little bit faster, right? So that's why we decided to go with this SKU as a hydration SKU. It's actually our most popular.
Okay.
So hydration SKU is our best seller, which was surprising to me. Initially
You thought this one, right?
Yeah, initially wanted to bring our energy SKU as our hero product, just because obviously the energy drink industry is so big, right? And I thought there could be a white space there. But what I've learned is, because we're not positioning ourselves as an energy drink beverage company, I think people are not yet seeing us as that way, right? They're just seeing us as a functional coconut water brand that has different options, right? And again, this is something that can change as well, right? We just launched in January this year. So with the energy SKU, we have our acai flavor. Acai, obviously, very popular, gaining momentum with different, stores opening up, offering acai bowls in the U.S. And I knew the acai would make sense to be our flavor for an energy drink, right? It does taste sometimes. Some people have called it like a better for you Red Bull, right? It has a similar taste profile. And for the caffeine content, we're using guarana. Guarana is a berry from Brazil, very famous for its naturally occurring caffeine. And the way that the caffeine from guarana is released is a little slower than other options for caffeine. So it does kind of give you that more steady level of energy.
Would you say this is healthier than Red Bull?
Absolutely. I mean, and I would say that the main sort of reason why our beverage is healthier than actually most other beverages in the market is that we're certified organic. So we also went we went ahead with the organic certification as a difference that we could provide in the market against other beverages that either are, there's coconut waters out there that are not certified organic, right? There are a lot of functional beverages that are not certified organic. The reason most aren't is because you can still acquire certain ingredients that are considered natural, but they are not ruled by agencies that are certifying those ingredients as organic. And to be certified organic, you have to have a much more diligent paper trail of where ingredients are coming from, how they're being made. And it is a bit more costly as well, right, to be certified organic and to acquire organic ingredients.
And what is the value then for a customer to say, I am going to purchase an organic product, I am spending the extra amount, but because of that, I have a certain benefit, right?
Yeah, and I think it's peace of mind, right? We have our USDA organic logo certification on the can as well. We are adjusting our label for our next production to make that even bigger.
Okay.
Because it's something that, again, as a consumer myself, if I'm interacting with different products on the supermarket, on the shelf, or even buying some, personally, if I see a USDA, organic logo, that brings me peace of mind, right?
Gotcha.
That whatever that product is claiming in terms of being organic or natural, I know that because they have a government body certifying that, I have that assurance and peace of mind that product is a clean product, right?
Absolutely.
Versus other products that are claiming they're natural, claiming all of this, but they're using, ingredients that, you as a consumer may not know actually where that came from, if it really is truly 100% natural.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in general, just as a side note, and I do want to add that, is because many people, whenever they're shopping for any kind of product, they always ask themselves, for example, why should I go to an online store and purchase something from a smaller brand, from a founder that actually cares about the product, or just go to Walmart, or let it be, for example, for clothing, right? Like, why should I buy from a small online store? And it's because the founder actually cares about it. So I had this discussion with another marketing operator in Atlanta, and we were talking about that. For example, for us that look at websites every day, we'd rather purchase from a site that looks bad because we know that the founder actually cares and is still the one that is inside of there. So I guess this is where the main value comes from, that there's an actual person behind it caring about the product and not only about making a bunch of money. So this is why I think also part of it is that the perceived value, and you're just underlining it with all of the certifications that you're able to acquire.
Yeah, and to that point, right, I think that's that's kind of the story of how many industries, right, operate under, right? You have the larger players, right, that have concentrated power through scale, and they acquire companies as well to even grow bigger. And it's not their fault that their North Star is profitability, right?
Of course.
As a larger company, that's you have many shareholders and that you have to respond to, and you have to show a path to profitability pretty quickly, right? And continue that on. And when you think about decisions being made in those large organizations, that's their North Star, right? So it's how do we reduce costs, right, while still giving something that we know consumers will just buy, right? And their scale helps with that because they just basically blitz retailers with as many SKUs as they can, as many products as they can to not leave room, right, for anyone else in the shelf. And a lot of the disruption, right, in many industries come from people like myself, like other founders who are looking at the space and thinking, okay, like there's not something that really either speaks to me personally, or there's not something that I see that a company cares really about for, and that's something that in this case I basically looked at I didn't really take a business school approach to how to do this. I took a personal approach, right? I just simply said to myself that, look, I like coconut water. I like things that are carbonated. There's not really, a company doing this yet. And how about, I make this into more of a consumer-focused product that focuses on wellness, right? And that's how everything starts to trickle down. And how do I achieve that vision, right? So certified organic, using clean ingredients, using ingredients that are good for you. I'm not using anything artificial. And I think consumers do respond to that. Obviously, with that comes the challenge of how to do this sort of execute on this vision at scale, which that tends to become a big question mark in terms of also trying to be profitable myself. But that is a challenge that I'm willing, right, to go through to make sure that this vision, right, that we have for this product, is executed.
Awesome. And for the last flavor, so you said one of them is energetic, which I think was this one, right?
This one is the hydration, guava.
Hydration.
We have the energy, acai.
Okay.
And our third one is our immunity. And the flavor that we use for immunity is probably for some people maybe the most controversial, more from a perspective of consumer knowledge. We are using a cashew apple flavor. In Brazil, we call it kaju. And it's a very popular fruit for juices in Brazil. And I really like the flavor, and in formulation and testing this, for some reason, the cashew apple flavor worked the best, right, for the immunity. And I knew it was a risk bringing in a flavor that probably many people may not be familiar with, but I knew that, it was a flavor that worked with this, and all we needed to do is just get people to taste it, right? For the immunity component of the drink, we were using vitamin C and ginseng as our immunity elements, and also both are organic. So for example, with our vitamin C, we're using extract from acerola fruit for the vitamin C, whereas, if you see other beverages with vitamin C, they're using sorbic acid or things that are a little bit more non-organic. But again, going back to how do we execute on this vision of creating something that is focused on wellness, I needed to still, if I needed to have vitamin C, it had to be organic, and we had to find ways to make this organic. So as a summary, hydration guava, it's our most popular SKU. Energy acai, second most popular SKU, and then the immunity kaju. Which is not obviously as popular as these two, but is what we've seen is gaining traction in retail, especially in retail that we are sampling more often on. So it does tend to either attract people because they like the design of the can and they grab it, or through sampling people like the flavor and purchase. And as another adjustment, actually, for our next label, we're gonna introduce the word apple here. So it's kaju apple, because currently in the can we only have the word kaju, which for some people, they have no idea what it is, but once they think we introduce kaju apple, it could, make it easier for people to experience it. We, for example, heard from feedback from people that it tastes a little bit like pineapple. So once I heard that, I knew that I had to introduce again the word apple here. So it made people feel a little bit more comfortable in what they're going to experience.
Is that also why you made it yellow?
It is. We as we worked with our branding agency, obviously we wanted to do the colors, very obviously bright colors and colors that made sense as a brand palette. Yeah, I mean, we could potentially change in the future, right? The types of fruit, but initially, yeah, since kaju tends to be more yellowish, that's why we went for the yellow as well.
Cool. So I would say, in general, this is a drink that if you want to have the feel of a soda, but do not want to feel bad about it and actually want to do something good for your body, this is basically the solution, I guess. And I think, I mean, whenever you're talking about certain challenges that you have, my mind already starts like working, okay, how can we reframe this differently that people understand that? And I think, for example, for me, I have been to Brazil a few times. So I know, for example, acai, you go to any city in Brazil and you would see an acai bowl place that you can go. Brazilians love acai because they know the benefits of the fruit and because of the taste. I just believe, at least that's what I believe, I don't know, is that when someone sees something, and again, acai is something that is a bit more, I would say, already popular, but as you were mentioning with the kaju one, is that it is just something that is not known yet. So I actually believe that you have a unique opportunity here to kind of like bring a certain part from Brazil to the US that is beneficial in terms of health, but also beneficial in terms of just enjoyment, because you're outside, you're on the beach, or you're just with friends, and maybe you do not want to drink alcohol because you have to drive, or you don't want to drink another Coca-Cola again. So I think it has definitely its place, and I think maybe the biggest, I would say, friction could be on to explain all of the benefits. What is it that I actually have in front of me? As you just mentioned, with that very, very simple translation of kaju right here. So yeah, do you ever get that if, for example, so I have a daughter, she's 3, and if she would look at this one, she would love it because of the crocodiles.
Yeah.
So do you get that very often that maybe even children see these and I'm like, yeah, that looks very cool?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's something that when we started with designing the brand, we wanted to create something that was character-based. So we have different characters and assets in different cans for their purpose. But also something that, was whimsical and bright and had that joyful feeling to it. Ultimately, ended up that, like you said, with certain designs, and for example, we sometimes give out stickers, right, in our samplings. Some children, right, get really interested in the design and the stickers. But obviously, children, right, are not our main market focus. What we've learned in terms of data that we see from D2C and also in retail, majority of our customers tend to be women, millennials, women. And there's different elements and hypotheses in how we're kind of thinking about that. One being, I think, this type of beverage, like a wellness beverage, I think women tend to, gravitate more to it, where there's other beverages that tend to be more masculine focused in their design and how they approach it. We tend to be more neutral in how we approach our market and allow people to just come in. It just happens that I think women have been more sort of attracted to what we're offering, but we still, like I said, like 60%, about 60% women. The rest, it's still men, so somewhat close to 50-50. And one of the approaches too that we as a company are taking, being a small company, is that we are always looking to improve, right? And I have a saying internally, right? It's like always improving, right? And because we're small, it allows us to make adjustments and make certain changes to our product and label and strategy based on what we're receiving from the market. So when I first started the company, I wanted to, I'll give a few examples, right, from a business model perspective and also from a product perspective. From a business model perspective, we started focused on D2C, right? We launched in January with our website, and we had Meta ads, Google ads. We even tried some OpenAI ads. They started as well. And what we realized is that it was not going to be as sustainable as we planned, right? Shipping costs are very high. To get subscribers in, it takes even more money and more effort into the advertising. And we realized pretty quickly that we needed to shift, right, based on what we're seeing from the market. So we're shifting more now, right, towards wholesale and retail, which most beverage brands need to do in order to really scale. Beverage is a type of product that people are used to grabbing, right, physically somewhere versus buying online. We don't offer any, sort of extra substances like THC or things that could, make this a little bit more attractive to buy online. And from a product perspective, we also heard a lot of feedback, right, from what people were telling us. And also, to your point, feedback on how to really describe this product, how to, through our samplings, we see great positive responses from people as we explain more about the product.
Exactly.
But how do we translate that into people quickly understanding that when they grab it, right? So I'll give you a couple examples. Currently in our product description under our logo, we call this a sparkling coconut tonic.
All right.
Right, and the reason for that was when we started, our focus was to make this into a beverage, into a functional beverage that could be considered like a social tonic, right? It's a trend now with certain non-alcoholic focused brands and calling themselves a tonic. So I thought, okay, let's maybe follow that line as we launch. And one of the things that we realized really quickly is that people are not really interested in, either not interested in the word or meaning of tonic, but also potentially confused by it.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So if you introduce something as a tonic, people already think this has a lot of stuff in it, or something medicinal, or something
I'm
that's
thinking even alcohol sometimes.
or even alcohol, right? And one of the changes that we're making is that under our logo, we're gonna add the description super coconut water.
Gotcha.
And that is feedback that we've heard, right, from
Yeah.
people. It's like, wow, this is like coconut water with more, right?
Exactly.
And we're changing it to super coconut water to make it even easier for people to understand what this product has, right? It's coconut water with more, right? There's something more here. And then we're also, and this is more of a, on the details, but on the top, right, we have no added sugar.
And
But
that's on every flavor, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Awesome.
but we're gonna change that as well, because it is a real estate, very important real estate in the can right here in the front that I wanted to use to, again, better describe this product quickly to people. So we're changing here to sparkling refresher.
Nice.
And the reason for that is obviously we're gonna remove the word sparkling here under the logo. But I still wanted people to understand it was a carbonated drink. So I needed to somewhere put that it was sparkling. And then refresher also came from different feedbacks that we started to get from people, where we realized, this is not a plain coconut water drink. We add a lot of different kind of ingredients to it, but also there's some water as well. It's a blended beverage, right? It's coconut water plus some water. And that is actually the recipe of what here, right, in the US market, we call a refresher, right? You see McDonald's, Starbucks have their refreshers. So it's something that we realized people would grasp quickly.
Do you know, so I think I have an idea why, but do you know why that word refreshing works so well?
I think, well, this is more related to what consumers are starting to get used to, right, in the market. Like I said, we have, companies like Starbucks, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts having beverages labeled as refreshers, right? These are beverages that are blended juice and water with different things, energy, right? Different types of functions as well. And consumers are starting to get used to that. When they buy a refresher, they understand that what they're buying, right? It's like a blended beverage that's refreshing, that has some stuff in it as well. And other brands as well in the industry are starting to call themselves refreshers. So it was a change that we are making for both the ease of understanding of a consumer, but also to make sure that we are basically piggybacking into the education that other brands and companies are doing on the word refresher as well.
Awesome. So I think, so my take on this is that sparkling, it tells you what it is, but the word refresher is the outcome. And this is why it's so much more powerful, right? Like, I mean, with sparkling coconut water, it is okay. I mean, for example, me myself, I really like to drink sparkling water.
Yeah.
It's something that we do in Germany quite
Yeah.
often. For example, in Mexico, almost no one drinks it.
Oh, really? Okay.
A quick analogy. So 3 years ago, we got hit by a hurricane. We were
Okay.
living right by the beach, and it basically wiped out the entire city. But because of that, we needed to get some water because, of course, all of the water supply was basically not there. So what people did is they opened these convenience stores up just to grab stuff to survive, because we were like cut out from civilization for 2 years.
Wow.
And what happened is that people took everything except for sparkling water.
No.
So they took beers, Coca-Colas.
That's incredible. They're not used to it, I guess, like drinking sparkling water, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they chose, of course, the immediate satisfaction of it is. So again, in terms of sparkling, I really do think, because it is not as common, I mean, let it be even on the top of the American continent to consume sparkling water, I think the word refreshing is, okay, I'm going to get refreshed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to purchase the outcome. So I think...
I love that understanding of it as well. It's the way we think about it too is in a similar vein. Sparkling refresher tells you how it drinks it, and then super coconut water tells you what you're drinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that what super you can then use, of course, for many different use cases, such as refreshing, such as added value in terms of more energy, more health, more, well, basically your body just responding to a very good product, right? And something very, very interesting also for you guys that are viewing and listening to us is that this podcast has a very direct analogy to another product, which is a supplement brand we're going to interview. And what they're doing is they have a very, I would say, similar challenge. They have a product that works very well, but it takes a bit more time to explain. And it's also on a subscription base because of it being supplement. So what is it that they're doing? And I think this could be partially interesting because your audience does not have the attention span that, for example, a supplement brand in terms of health for 40, 50 plus has. But they're doing webinars. So what they're doing is they're bringing on doctors or physicians, just people that are being able to distribute the product, and bring them on and explain just in an entire webinar about the main ingredient and its effectiveness in different use cases. And they have, I mean, for example, an hour, 2 hours, and during these webinars, people actually get into the subscriptions.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So, and basically, this is how they're able to create a following that then continues mouth to mouth, right?
Yeah. No, that's you know, it's something that for us specifically, we see, for example, you know, the audience from like TikTok being interesting for that kind of conversation, right? TikTok is it's a whole other animal on its own, and it's something that in order to do well, you know, we either need, you know, extra resources to help, or, you know, you take a lot of my own time as well. So it's something that we are looking into doing like pretty soon, but it hasn't yet made sense yet for us to do, especially since I'm able to still grab the most important part for us as an early company was feedback. That is something that as I started the company, I realized, look, I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm introducing a type of product that there really isn't something like it yet in the market, and there is challenges with explaining it, for certain customers. So the adjustments that we're doing now are meant to maybe address, those kind of quick, to your point, like the quick attention span that people have when they get something on the shelf. Probably is 80% of people that go into a grocery store already know what they want, right? So we're fighting for like even a smaller portion of people that are potentially curious of what's new, right? So the adjustments that we're making are more related to that, and how do we address that first, because that velocity on retail is the most important metric, right, for a beverage brand, as well as we seek investors, right? Those are the type of things that they want to see. Subscriptions, for example, we could, also take that route, and it's something that we have like a good number of subscribers, at least for our size. But in order to really, build up that subscriber list, I think it would take also some effort, right, in terms of more investment online. And that investment, we are focusing on that investment on more of the retail side, right? Especially because if you go to a retailer and you say, hey, we have good number of subscriptions but no velocity in retail, it can create some difficult dynamics, I think, in that conversation to get interest from investors. So again, going back to the idea of feedback and learning as I go, really quickly I try to understand if something needs change, right? So we quickly change our model to focus more on retail while keeping our D2C as a great data gathering, right, channel, and then looking into, as we grow, right, looking into other channels to introduce our products to larger audiences like TikTok, right? And I think that will be a big, Amazon as well is something that we're thinking about entering as well. So we're definitely looking into building our community even more, especially with something that does deserve a little bit more explaining.
Absolutely, and I think with the bold design and with all of the colors that you have, it's gonna be perfect for TikTok, basically.
Yeah, we hope so. Yeah, it's as you know, I think anything online nowadays has become increasingly more expensive in terms of the CPCs, the CPMs, like everything's getting more expensive. It's becoming very difficult to just hope for a good return, right, on a spend online. So I think that the other bet too is just it's community focused, right? What I mean by that is especially here in our home base in Miami, are there opportunities with influencers, with yoga events, with wellness events that can be shared and reshared and keep and focus on that kind of organic volume, right? That we could get from the community.
Awesome. Yeah, one other thing that just comes to mind, and you can give me opinion on that, is to look out for, in terms of the DTC space, of course, to look out for collaborations, for example, kind of like this, your product being a supplement product to something else, right? Like, as an example, it could be a product that is also in the wellness space. I mean, as you're saying, you're tapping into the market perfectly. For example, yoga places, your ICPs. And if there's an influencer or already an e-commerce store out there that is selling something yoga related, you could, of course,
absolutely. And the it's interesting. As we think about new ideas and we as I've thought about different options and how to grow, right, the brand, and I think one of the biggest wake up calls I think any entrepreneur, right, with a vision has in the beginning is that as you are building your vision and as you're kind of executing and bringing something to life, in your mind, it's the best idea ever, right? In your mind, this is incredible. No one will say no to this, or everyone will be delighted, right, by what you're bringing to the world. And I think as a great, it's a really good wake up call as you start the company, as you bring something to market, you truly realize how hard, right, is to grab people's attention. Right, people's attention is probably the number one, thing that everyone wants to do, and it's becoming increasingly harder to do, right, because of all the segmentations in different social medias and channels, and how decentralized people are now with what they're looking and what they're reading and where they're going. It's not as easy, right? Maybe the early days of online, right, online media, online ads. And especially with a beverage product, with a consumer product, right? Like you're fighting for that shelf space, right? You're fighting for a space on the shelf, and you have to prove yourself, right? And that is extremely difficult when, again, going back to what I mentioned, there's probably 5 or 10% of people into the store that are maybe thinking about something new to grab, right? So that attention span that it's so hard to grasp was a big wake up call for me, right? It's like, okay, like I'm not gonna, be an overnight success as I thought in my mind, as every entrepreneur wants to be. So I had to learn a lot of patience, right, in how to get there. But most importantly, like I said, what can I learn from what the market is telling me? And that's something that as I mentioned, we executed pretty quickly on as soon as we started to get a certain consistent level of feedback. And that's what we're doing now with certain adjustments with the label, with the formula to make it, we're rebalancing the formula to make it even more lighter, right, as a refresher would be. So that won't stop, right? So, as we think about TikTok, think about Amazon, there's all these different kind of things that I want to do, and I wanted to do before we launched, that you realize that, you can't do it right away, right? You have to understand that, sure, you can pick a lane to for example, we did meta ads immediately, right, to drive traffic to D2C, and as our key channel. But I recall, like, before launching, I was thinking, okay, like, TikTok's right after, Amazon's right after, and you realize really quickly that it's not that, things don't happen that quickly. Success doesn't happen that quickly. You have to truly understand what the consumer is telling you. You have to really understand what the market is telling you with other competitors and what they're doing. And ultimately, again, we'll have time, right? That this is a very long-term type of business to be in, and I'm excited to see how, as we expand to more markets, to more people, what kind of feedback we get from that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that very awesome introduction. Now, kind of transitioning over, what I want to do is, so you touched the topic of the space that the can itself has, right? You could, I would say, if you talk about retail, you could compare the space that you have on the can, kind of like with a website.
In terms of what's in the can, the information in the can? Or?
Exactly. So let's say this would be product number 1, and this would be product number 2, and they would be competing for shelf space. So of course, what grabs your attention first? This is what I mean in terms of, so basically for you as an founder of the brand, you get a can, right? I mean, the can is not something you can really modify anymore. Yeah. The only thing you can modify is like what you wrap around it. And it is kind of the same way with a website, right? A website needs to do certain things in order for you to be able to purchase. You need an add to cart button, you need a checkout button. At best, you have product images. So this is just something that's a given that you need to have. But everything else is kind of like up to you. So you were already mentioning something very, very interesting in terms of, okay, we're going to change the text on the very top there because it's our most valuable, I would say, space, or I always call it, in my words, screen real estate, right? So if you want to, you could quickly, we can have a look at the website, and I could give you a few tips of things that I saw that I definitely think would be interesting. So I'm just going to move the camera a little bit here, and I'm going to stand up because this way I'm not blocking the screen here. So let me see. Maybe something like that. Yes, so we have you in here. Perfect. Okay, so if we have a look at the homepage and basically not do anything, do you know how to switch to mobile view here? If not, I can help you. If you click right click and then inspect. Yes, perfect, thank you. So whenever I looked at your store, this is like with any online store, this is the first thing I do. I look at mobile because most likely, as you know, most of the traffic is mobile anyway. So one thing that came to mind immediately, imagine someone not knowing anything about your brand coming to the homepage. Where should they click now in order to get the product? For me, what I immediately, am doing is, okay, hey, I see something, I want to click this right here. Or maybe this is clickable. So these are clickable, but they do not bring you...
redirect to anyone, yeah.
It doesn't direct you to anything. So what you're forcing the user to do now is to either scroll or figure out something like the hamburger menu right there that you can click. But there is a certain thought process to it. We were talking about attention rate and TikTok generation. So you would have already lost someone like that here. So one thing I would always just suggest, and in terms of for your site to not break the design, just make it linkable.
The images. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So everything, and especially talking about screen real estate, talking about, for example, the can again, this is on the homepage, your most expensive screen real estate is the top right here. And currently it's without any action to be taken. So this is like one of the first things I would definitely recommend to improve. If you could do me a favor and click on the hamburger menu right there. This is another thing I realized. So you have now shop, learn, and store locator. I know the reasoning behind why you have structured it like this is to make it a bit more easier to understand. But if you click on shop now, please, I think this is an unnecessary step someone has to take. That I think the best way to do that is whenever you click the hamburger menu, you want them to see products immediately.
Already, yeah.
And then if they scroll, for example, here further down, then of course you can give them all of the other links.
Yeah.
But if that's a store that is primarily focused to selling this, I would start out with this. And the cool thing here is you actually now write out energy, immunity, hydration. So basically coming back to the word refresher, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I know the outcome. If
Yeah.
I drink this, I will get energy. If I drink this, I get immunity,
Yeah.
and here hydration. So I think this is one of the things that is very difficult to sell through an
Yeah.
online store, especially with beverages, is that how do I explain that perceived value
Yeah.
like that, right? I really, really like that. And I think if you are able, as you're doing with the cans, to keep on transitioning towards the outcome, like
Yeah.
market the outcome a bit more, I think this is where you're like one of the biggest room for opportunity.
Yeah.
Definitely is. If you can do me a favor and click on one of these, whichever ones you like, we will most likely get to a product page, right? By the way, I have to say, I really, really love the design of the online store. It is not something you see every day, which is a refresher for me because
Yeah.
I look at so many websites and they almost look the same. And especially now with the introduction of AI coding, is now every website looks the same,
Yeah.
right? So this is very, very cool to see that this looks different. So that website, is that something you have built or someone has built for you? Or how was that process?
Yeah, we did work with an agency
Okay.
that our branding agency who created our brand actually also built our website. So I think what you're seeing is also, you know, kind of a continuation of what we wanted to do with the brand in terms of something unique, something full of life and whimsical, and bring it to the website experience as well.
Gotcha. So one thing I see here right now, again, coming back to most expensive screen real estate. So this preview right here is longer than a usual phone. I think your usual phone will cut out right about the title, more or less. Again, coming back to take an action, right? Like there's no button now that tells me what to do. There's no next action to take. I know as a founder or someone looking at your own website every day, you would say, that's ridiculous. People know that they should scroll down.
Oh no,
You would be surprised.
Oh no, I 100% agree with the mindset, right? I think, and that's something that's very, I think, difficult as well to grasp as you're building a website and product. There's so many different, you know, kind of so many challenges and modifications that you could think of. But, you know, everyone's brain only has so much space,
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
these are the type of things that, you know, it's important to review because those are easily kind of missed as you're building your company. And I 100% agree. I'm you know, like I said, I used to have a background, right, with online ads and D2C for me as a way to start as our channel, right, to sell the product as we started. It was something that felt comfortable to me, right?
Gotcha.
Because that's kind of where my experiences was from. But ultimately, you know, you start to kind of maybe kind of think away from that as we started to shift to retail and kind of just allow the site to live on its own there, right? Because,
of course.
but you know, if there's kind of easy low-hanging fruits, right, that could greatly, right, improve conversion rates, right? That's something that, you know, like I said, subscription is something that we're still interested in. You know, is there, you know, different ways, right, that we can make it easier, right, for people to subscribe and click on and kind of follow through the steps quickly on the phone.
Absolutely. And the things I just mentioned, they were like already a bit of a, I mean, there's still CRO basics, but it's already a bit more of a deep dive.
Yeah.
Another thing I realize here is, and I think that, and it is something I've tested quite often and it always works, especially, like it keeps on working a lot better now, is to add lifestyle images to it. So for example, here again, the outcome is energy. So if you would have, for example, like a quarter of a next image showing a person maybe exercising or someone like living the energy lifestyle, that is also something how I can understand the product, like the power of the ingredient without doing anything. Like we're not even talking about add to cart buttons and these symbols right here. It is something a lot more simpler, right? Of where, how do I show, again, the outcome? Just as an example, and I really do apologize if I already go so deep into it.
No, go ahead. I love this.
For example, the free shipping bar right here, the free shipping on orders over $45, you would be amazed how little to none people see it because it's so far up. If you notice in a retail store, you would see the most expensive products right on eyesight, and then the cheaper ones further down. Kind of the same thing here is that people do not look up there anymore, and the value of free shipping on orders over $45, it is definitely here, but if you scroll a little bit down, the problem here is that I see $39.99 and $19.99. Now, the thing for me is then, okay, I will need to purchase 2 flavors in order to get the free shipping, which of course you want to because that's how you're able to sustain shipping. But it could be something, again, maybe you have tested, I mean, in retail you can't really test it, but it would be something whenever you look into more heavy DTC, something to test.
Yeah, and that's, with the different types of, I guess, carrots, right, that you put for a consumer. And what I've seen from other beverage brands doing D2C, shipping costs tend to be, higher, right? For a 12-pack, for example, right? Like it could be like $12-14, right? And even for ground shipping, so it's still the slowest. And when I turn off free shipping, I do see a difference on more abandoned carts, for example.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah. And in this case, and to your point as well, the main message is free shipping over 45, right? But for a new consumer, they don't know exactly like the pricing yet, right? So to your point, they will see $23.99 here. It's like, okay, like there's no free shipping for me. But the way in which we do kind of incentivize that purchase on free shipping is obviously in the case they do like a 12-pack or like, if they do 2 6-packs,
I didn't even see that.
So if you didn't see that, that's, maybe we make this bigger.
A simple tip, leave it the way it is. Just get rid of the drop down, do 6-pack and 12-pack.
Yeah, just the 2 buttons. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And I would make them a bit bigger as well. Not a ton bigger, but just a little bit bigger.
But that's a great point. You didn't even see it.
I didn't even see it. So this is definitely something where, okay, now you're free shipping. Okay, but now it would be 44. That $1 difference, is that a big deal, or how does that work?
So the free shipping is more to incentivize bundled purchases, right? So 2 6-packs, different flavors, something like that to incentivize that. But the amount we test different amounts every now and then. 45 was more of the amount that made sense to get people to bundle more.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we can obviously change, test different things.
Yeah, if you add, for example, a 6-pack to cart, do you get an upsell for a different, I think, flavor? Or is it that currently the user does have to go browse?
Okay, so in our shopping cart, we do add like additional items for them to look at as well. So kind of like more of a bundle,
All right. Yeah, here I think what I would love to do is we tested that for that phone case brand I'm going to visit. Is that there is what we did is whenever you click add to cart, it's instead of saying add to cart, it says add to cart with special offer. And if you click it, you get a pop-up with the offer for a second case, but on a super discounted rate.
Right.
So for example, instead of $85, it's going to be $20. But I mean, they were able to do it because they were framing it as a lifetime warranty. So get your second case already up front, so that once the first one breaks, you kind of already have the second one. But I'm thinking this could be a very, very powerful tool here to have a pop-up after you add the first one to cart. Hey, you know what? In order for you to get free shipping, you would need to make sure to add something else to it. And this is why I was so much on the 45, because again, here, if we add that, we have that 1 cent being away, but I think that's because of taxes. Is that now running up?
And by the way, I think we recently changed pricing as well. I think it was like $44.99, I believe.
Gotcha.
And I think we may have to haven't updated yet that messaging on that.
Okay.
But to your point, that's it's always so tricky, right, with how you are, because not only it's a consumer experience thing, but with pricing is another thing, right? Like how to best price, right, your product, and how to understand if that's working, right? With A/B tests, for example, I think there's different tools now that do A/B testing for pricing, right?
Yes.
Because that has been, a difficult kind of sort of, it's almost like an art, you don't really know what consumers will react to as a pricing. Like, for example, we had our pricing a little bit higher actually when we started, and that was one of the feedbacks we got. It's like, oh yeah, I would love to, but it's too expensive, right?
Gotcha.
And that's the difficult part about the education of the product as well, in terms of, to your point, and how maybe we could present this as a more premium product with lifestyle images. We can kind of try to adjust this from on the website specifically to better, educate the consumer on why the pricing is such.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, because the pricing has its very fair point, and there's a reasoning for it. The consumer just in the moment needs to understand it a lot more, and as you're saying, on the spot, in the moment, and this is where.
And also there's a challenge with discounts, right? And
Yes.
and I was, our promotion as a free shipping was something that made sense, right? For just given the cost of shipping. But I've thought about discounting as well, and the challenge that we see also in retail with discounting is consumers start to expect it.
Oh,
right. So for example, with retail, every month or so, we will have like a buy two for $6, right? Something like that. And we've already gotten feedback from people that said, oh, okay, like, oh, I'll just buy one today because you guys are not in promotion. I'll wait until you guys are in promotion so I can get more, right? And that is also, right, similar to a website in that case, where if you're presenting too many discounts, like almost like an always on kind of different promotion, different things are adding discount, like it could, right, deteriorate maybe a bit of the value. So, there obviously, it's more of a challenge for us to figure it out and how to best, put out a discount for something. Maybe, hey, like let's just say like this is a challenge that will come pretty soon. Our products, have an expiration date, right? So if, by, the month, a couple months in before an expiration date hits, maybe, yeah, then we could do like the Immunity SKU, we could put it on discount, or we could, maybe bundle that, at a discount with another beverage. So those are things that like you constantly have to think about, because you don't want, again, one of the more difficult things with pricing, right, is your vision for how premium the product is and the cost, right, it takes to put something out there into the world, and the expectations of the consumer with that vision, right? And if something is not being met there, right, if the consumer is not seeing this as a premium product or at the cost, we gotta look for ways to adjust, right, and see how we can help the consumer, right, understand that this is worth it, right?
Yes.
That this value is worth it. Not only worth it, it's probably even better than, for example, our product by the ounce is cheaper than a Harmless Harvest coconut water, right? A Harmless Harvest.
You need to put that there on the website. What you just mentioned, that per ounce.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if you just quickly close the cart before I forget it, you scroll up a little bit. You could put that right underneath there in the middle, kind of like
a comparison,
like a little disclaimer.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I quickly
No, go ahead.
stop here. Talking about pricing. So the way I would do it, if I would figure out what's the best pricing for you guys is to actually test it. And I'm gonna give you an example. So on 4th of July, what I did is, and I never did that before, just interviewing people about a product. So I'm working with a brand with an Argentinian founder who sells in the US grills. And same story. How do you explain a value of a $500, $700 grill up against, well, I can go to Home Depot and get it for $100. So what I did is, like, before I came here, I tried to do a customer survey on the website itself. But of course, you need to do it in a way because, as you know, on a mobile screen, the space is very much limited. So what happens is I said, let's do it, but only on the homepage. So every time someone comes to the homepage and not directly to our product page, let's ask them why, what is it that's confusing? And guess what? Almost no one has answered it. So I was like, you know what better time to do that than 4th of July and just ask people in action doing it.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that came out is that people said, I would love to pay $500 for a grill. If it lasts a lot longer than maybe 1 year, but 5 to 10 years, we're gladly able to pay that. And what we also did before I came here is we did a price test. So we took all of the grills and we tested the price 5% more expensive. So you could imagine on a $500, $700, or even $2,000 product, 5% uplift is quite something. And guess what? The conversion rate increased, and not by a little, a lot more. Same thing we did for a shoe brand. We did price testing. I think it was 175 up against 185 leather shoes made in Turkey. And again, it did better.
Yeah.
So why? Because as you know, is that if there's a higher price tag, you automatically associate it to being more valuable. Of course, in the beverage space, but this is where, say, testing is so important.
Yeah.
You don't know, and I don't even know. So this is where testing is important, as you know, in retail, but especially in DTC, because you have such a controlled environment, is where I think also for you guys to acquire data is DTC, definitely, as you mentioned. That's where you can test out different stuff, different things, such as pricing, free shipping, and then translate that towards everything else.
And you know, for us on the data, because we haven't, because we don't have yet, like, I guess, what I would call like substantial like level of traffic, right? To have a more concrete answer, right? Because a lot of, like I said, we've done some testing with pricing and the promotions and stuff, you know, in that sense, and you know, we can potentially get false flags that way because the traffic is, you know, not huge enough, right? So maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, right? We don't know specifically, but at least for D2C, what we see as very valuable from a data perspective is the type of consumer.
Gotcha.
Right. So that was something very enlightening to me as we did this. And as I mentioned, right, we started to see, wow, like women outnumber men much higher than I expected. The age group, right? We thought that this would speak more loudly to a much younger audience, right? Like Gen Z, like early 20s, right? Even college maybe. But what we've noticed is most of the women, right, purchasing are, you know, kind of more older millennials, right? Like 35, 36, right? Like late 20s, even late 30s, right? And that, again, kind of allowed me to maybe have a better understanding of what to do next or how to position, right, the product in certain ways. But, you know, from a D2C perspective, like you said, it's really about the control, right? Like you, for example, the reason why we didn't start on Amazon yet is because I wanted to keep that control early on with the type of consumers, right, that they were getting, but also, you know, building your email list, right? Email marketing is something that we're also going to focus on as we grow that base. And, you know, through that base, that's how you can try to get more subscriptions as well, right? So all in all, right, like D2C is something that we're still, you know, focused on, maybe not as much as before. But it's, you know, every opportunity, you know, just today, right, this session kind of did already kind of brings some stuff to light that, you know, I myself am not looking at every day, right? But it's still important to, when you have time to do it, right? Like, and if you have a D2C website, if you have any traffic, right, going to a site, why not make that, you know, why not maximize that opportunity with that customer when they go to your site, right? Like we talked about attention spans, right, being so valuable nowadays. You know, someone looking at your can on the shelf, someone being redirected to your website, those are all that you have that one moment, right, with that consumer. So yeah, no, I appreciated the points on the website. I'm probably gonna already execute some of those changes pretty soon.
Awesome. And as a last test idea for maybe retail, and so this is something I don't know because I really don't have a lot of experience in retail. Is it possible that, for example, of the same flavor, you could test two designs or complete different designs of cans or not?
That's very challenging. Yeah, for consumer products, it's challenging, and the main reason for that is when you produce, right, a can, or when you produce a beverage, like you are dealing with, you know, suppliers or manufacturers that will have their minimums, right, and what they can produce, and that minimum usually is already pretty big, right, for what we can do. So it's interesting. I never seen a beverage brand try that when they have scale to do it. But yeah, it's quite interesting. I wonder if it could potentially cause confusion maybe with customers, or?
Could be, because my idea is you're saying that your main audience at the moment are women in the millennials. I believe this is because you are not, again, selling the product, you're selling the outcome, just being healthier in general, because they have the option between a can of Coke and this. A woman in her millennials doing exercise is already aware that she shouldn't drink a can of Coke. Going back a bit more younger of an audience, or maybe even guys, I mean, we don't really care much about our health at that age group, right? So I'm thinking, how about if the design would be a bit more technical, right? As you mentioned about this amount of ounces of coconut water inside, for example, and just put it on there bigger.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I do. It's funny. I love the idea of, you know, basically taking concepts, right, from different industries into, you know, like a D2C A/B test concept into a consumer product. I think it's interesting if you have the scale to do it.
Gotcha.
I think the not the challenge, but more of the consequence of that is that you spend so much money, effort and time into creating a particular world, in which you want your consumers to be part of, right? So in this case, we're creating this world of these whimsical characters, you know, this wellness sort of world that you're coming into, and that, you know, we don't want to be super clinical, right? Either. So one of the narratives that, you know, on our website, we talk a little bit about this as well, and especially in any kind of public opportunity that I have to share more about our vision, is to kind of reduce more of that complexity that certain functional beverages have, right?
Makes sense.
Where you get something, you're like, wow, like, you know, it's good for my health, but I have no idea what's in here, right? You look at like 10 ingredients, you have no idea what they are, right? So I wanted to create something that would still convey this, I guess, platform of wellness, but in a much kind of simpler way to understand, right? So, hey, like super coconut water, we have some functional ingredients in here that most people are already aware of. If they want to read more, they can, right? But we're not kind of pushing that too much. We're not putting, you know, the amount specific of, you know, each ingredient that we're adding into it, right?
Makes sense.
So it's to your point too, also relating to the website notes. We are trying to convey more of that feeling, right, versus the clinical, right?
Gotcha.
And I love that idea, right, about like how to convey more of a feeling than, you know, lifestyle images, right, that we can put more on. We are, especially with our new label and new formula, we are positioning our product to now, like, we're gonna seek more distribution nationally, right? Meaning, right now we're only focused in Miami. We have some doors in other cities as well, but just independent stores, small stores, right? But once, you know, but because we started small here in Miami, it allowed me to, again, understand what we needed to improve, adjust, and now with this new kind of approach that we have, I think we would be ready to now, like, try to push the product even more into different regions, bigger distributors, bigger, you know, retailers, Whole Foods, you know, your Kroger's, Albertsons, you know, Publix right here in Miami, in Florida is very popular. But when we do that, I think that's kind of the, you know, the stage in which, you know, now this is now, you know, we can't go back from here, right? So right now, but even then, before we do that, I think it's still valuable to look at some of these changes in our own properties, right, social media or website, to better convey that idea of a feeling, right? Being like the refresher, right, idea is similar, right? That idea of like how, basically, like, it was kind of reverse engineering, like, how can I make this as simple, right? You're basically always looking like, how can I make this simpler and simpler and easier, right? Like, so that's kind of where we are now, right? Where we're through the sampling, through the feedback that I've gotten from consumers, how we use that to our advantage, right? Like super coconut water, something I never thought about that word until I interacted with people more, right? The kaju thing was interesting. I heard someone say, oh, it tastes like pineapple. And I was like, well, the name of the fruit is cashew apple. I should just put that in the, you know what I mean? So all these interactions are super valuable, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think, you know, once we get into our next production and try to expand more of the product, I think we'll be ready, right, to be more public about like what we're trying to do. Because when I started, I had some idea, I had a vision, what we're doing, but now it's clearer than
Gotcha,
ever
yeah.
before, right? So now, you know, the way in which I'm explaining the product to you today would probably be different than if I did before, right? If I did before we launched, right? So it's kind of this ongoing evolution that you're trying to find that sweet spot of where the consumer wants you to be. And that's the challenge, right? It's like you have a vision where the consumer will be, but the consumer is going to tell you where he wants it to be, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of how we are approaching, right? The company, the product, and everything we do. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very exciting, and I think again the most exciting part for me is the retail connection with DTC, and something you said I heard the very first time. We are using DTC to acquire data, and then translate that into retail. And I think as you're saying, I think the most important thing whenever you have a product and you want to bring it out there is to, of course, acquire as much data as possible. Yeah. As you said, the company or the brand and even the product will grow with time based on customer feedback.
Yeah.
So
and it's a you know, a flywheel in terms of, you know, D2C to retail, but also retail to D2C.
Yep.
It's something that I am thinking about as we, you know, become available in more channels as well, like Amazon, TikTok, or, you know, where, you know, if someone sees you on the shelf and they really like your product, they're going to be curious about what the company is, who, you know, what is this? And I think that is another way in which you could potentially acquire customers on D2C, especially for subscriptions, right? If someone really loves your product and knows they can get a big discount on subscriptions, like boom, right? Like that's another conversion. So I do believe in the D2C retail as being more of a flywheel. Yeah. And it's something that I think, obviously, you know, there's a reason why many beverage brands tend to stay away, right, from D2C altogether because of the cost that it takes. But, you know, I think because in where we are now as a company, we sort of are in the initial stages of creating our own model to operate on. And I think if you as a company start your model without D2C, it's tough to bring D2C into it after a while. Whereas because we brought D2C, we started with D2C, it does allow us to maybe long-term create more of that flywheel, right? Or having a really nice D2C channel, a really, you know, engaged social channel. And then obviously long-term, you know, we'll have opportunities for more education through TikTok. We'll have more scale through Amazon. But, you know, before that, it was really important for me now to at least kind of curate my own consumer data and also understand, you know, who is buying this and why, right? And, you know, some of the reviews and feedbacks that we've gotten as well from this experience, and it will only help us, right, improve, you know, and by the way, the design, right, we talked about the design, well, could that change? It could, right? I think, you know, some may look at this as potentially kind of complicating maybe, right, that real estate. But again, it could be that in a year from now, I, you know, can have a conclusion that, okay, maybe it did complicate too much, right? But I still believe that what we have as a can design, right, in terms of, again, like that real estate that we're using on our product, I do think people do gravitate towards something more different when the proposition is clear, right? So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, you know, change some of the label message and some of the stuff, you know, that is more of a light lift right now. It's easy to do with the expectation and vision that our can design is still, you know, in the right place right now to differentiate ourselves on the shelf. But yeah, it could change, right? Things change, and I think that's something that I'm bringing myself into this business as a key pillar, right, of how we operate, which is, you know, always improving, right? Always improving, always looking for ways to find that sweet spot, like I said, in where the consumer wants us to be.
That makes total sense. And I think a tip for every e-com founder and something you have mentioned very well. And I think it is something I've seen very often where e-com founders, they try to dump a lot of money into changes that are maybe, as you're saying, not at this stage should be relevant. So I think the most important job from an e-com founder is to really decide, okay, where is it that I'm gonna put more effort in at the moment? What can wait a little bit? And where is it that I need to focus or just double down on right now? And I think that's with every business, not only.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? It's the I think every founder, right, who goes through that and like what to spend time on, right? And I think, for us, right, and like I said, it was pretty clear to me early on that's like, okay, in order for this to work, right, we need to focus on retail. We need to understand retail. We need to understand what retail buyers, right, the grocery buyers are looking for. Is our product exciting enough for them? Differentiated enough for them? We've gotten feedback before from distributors saying, hey, we already work with 2 other coconut water brands that are doing well. Like what so their first idea of us is coconut water, right? So, but once I quickly explain, hey, like by the way, like all the coconut waters brands you work with, they just offer coconut water as their core product. We are offering coconut water plus more, right? We call it super coconut water. And the way that I see it is similar to how, modern soda and modern coffee came to be, right? You have coffee with a bunch of more additional stuff. You have sodas that are now, modern soda now are like with additional stuff. And in the beginning, they also had probably some of those friction points, right, with grocery and retailers and how they're looking at their segment. So that's another level of challenge for us in trying to educate the B2B side of this as well, not only in the consumer. But it's I think when you think about what to focus on, it really comes down to where lies the biggest kind of ROI or opportunity for you as a business, right? And with D2C, for example, like if this was working for us, right? If we had a product or something that worked really well on D2C, and that's kind of where most of the revenue is coming from, most of the revenue share is coming from, you have to spend as much time as possible on that, right?
Absolutely.
And for us, right now, retail is a big important thing for us. So we're spending as much time as we can on that, and right, that and obviously our product is a physical product, and all this real estate, has to communicate what this product is doing. So that's again the adjustments and things that we're doing to focus on is mainly on the retail side, on the product side. But again, I think D2C for us, I obviously as we started, I have a big soft spot, right, for D2C and the opportunities that could come from it. I myself as a consumer, right, if I go to a website, and I know you mentioned about if the website doesn't look good, I probably actually care. I actually could it could mean more to me because but I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it could be more of a personal perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Given your background.
Absolutely.
Because my personal perspective is, and the reason why we built the website and how it is now, is it is to convey to a consumer that's looking at us for the first time online that we are bigger than we are.
Absolutely.
Right? That we create that credibility with our website. So that's why I wanted to focus on D2C first. I wanted to understand the consumer, I wanted to understand the data, I wanted to understand the opportunity. I wanted to learn the opportunity of D2C for our product as well. Because I didn't know that our CAC was going to be as expensive, right? I didn't know that getting subscriptions is going to be as hard, right? So that was more also a learning for me. But ultimately, I think it's a huge important part for us to have a property that we do as this website is to look like the way it does, to kind of convey like, oh wow, okay, there's a product that I could pay more for, or there's a product that is unique. It's an experience online that's unique than anything else that I've seen, right? So I do think there's a big if I was giving advice to any founder, right, that was creating a new product, consumer product that they thought, maybe I don't know D2C, I don't know. I would suggest like spending like more time than you think you should on making sure your experience online is a good experience, right, for the consumer. It may be that you don't, are focused on selling, right? Maybe as much on D2C, but that experience that the consumer has interacting with your brand online will likely kind of dictate, right, how they feel about your brand in general. So if I, as a beverage brand, had a pretty simple website, sure, right? Like it could, it would be cheap, right? It would be easy to maintain. But I don't think I could potentially charge, right, what we're charging for if it was just a simple, because then people are like, oh, they're not focused on making this even nice for me to see. Why would I pay, this much, right, for this beverage? So, and obviously, the branding, I think, also deserved.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
The branding deserved a nice property to look, a nice website to interact with as well. And this is early. We just started, so the things that we can do with it as well are unlimited as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to summarize again. That comment that I made about, websites that look worse, I am really talking about people like myself that are marketers, look at the website every single day.
Yeah.
So again, I had that discussion with another operator, and he was saying, you know what, I think we both are most likely not the average consumer. I mean, especially for me, where I live, I don't even get packages delivered. I need to drive to the next city. So buying online is something that is a bit more trickier at the moment. So I might not be the ideal customer. But I think in a resume or in general, what's very, very interesting for me, and of course for every e-com founder out there as well, is that you who is at the moment focusing on retail still say, you know what, I want to have a website. This is a place where I can test. This is a place where I can observe, because as you mentioned, getting a can reprinted is a bit more trickier than to just say, you know what, let's change a few of the elements and test it 50-50. That's going to be a lot easier to implement than something on the can.
And that's you kind of hit the hammer a bit on the nail there in terms of a consumer product, right? Where if you just focus on retail on Amazon, for example, which is a very common approach, right, for a lot of beverage brands, they'll put their product on Amazon and try to get it on shelves. The only real data point that is going to help you is just velocity, meaning how many are you selling, right? Maybe on Amazon you could maybe understand some types of consumers. I'm not sure if Amazon gives you as much data as that. Maybe from the reviews, right? Sure, you get some reviews there. It's another data point. But that's about it, right? Like you just see how you're selling, how much you're selling, the reviews, and that's it. But with the D2C, like I said, I can understand exactly like who it is, where they're from, what's their age, what they're buying. So that helped me a lot, with, again, understanding our positioning in the market, right? It's like, okay, like the hydration bestseller by a mile, like I didn't expect that, right? Immunity is interesting on D2C, not as popular, but on retail it is popular, right? So it's just always good to have that D2C channel working for you to, again, better help you understand, like, are you looking at just that one, right, sort of environment or that channel to make decisions that will affect your whole company, or are there other channels, other environments that you can look at? So D2C, right, is one of them. And I'm a person that my background, I really enjoyed making decisions based on data. And again, that's why D2C was a natural thing for me to start on. And that translates into every channel right there in D2C. I love talking to my contact at our retailer here in Miami that we're in. Milam's Markets is a retailer that we're in Miami. I love talking to him to understand like, hey, like what's the selling data, what's selling more, or when, because I can't. It makes me uncomfortable, right, to just come up with decisions, right, just because I like it or because I saw something, right. Again, I obviously started this with my own vision, but in order for this to work out, you got to listen to the consumer, you got to listen to the market. I know it's cliche to say this, but
it is true.
The consumer really is who is the ultimate decision maker for your company.
Absolutely. I think that sums it up very nice. And in general, in the world we live now, data gets more and more important. So I think this is a perfect wrap for the entire story.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to check out your product, where are they able to find it?
Yeah, we are available right online on our DTC channel on sparklinuts.co. We are also available in about 160 doors spread across Miami, New York, Austin, and the San Francisco area. Mostly independent stores, but if you're in those areas, most likely you'll find us. If you want to know exactly where we are in those areas, we do have our store locator in our website. And in Miami, we are available in many independent retailers, but our main grocery here in Miami is Milam's Markets.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this insightful discussion and the journey with Sparklinuts. And I'm very excited where the journey is heading. And yeah, looking forward to see more.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the time, Andres.
Thank you.